Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast, where we are basking in a 4-goal victory against Bournemouth. Was it 4? Was it 5?
5!
Oh my god!
No, it was 4 before Russell Martin went off the pitch before halftime.
Was it?
He probably thinks it's still 4-0. Someone's got to tell him.
He thinks his second's a bit harsh. It's only 4.
We are bathing in a 5-goal victory after thrashing Bournemouth. It was a game of, well, it just, even though Southampton are a bit rubbish, guys, it just surpassed all our expectations during this siege kind of era, didn't it? So we're going to dive into that very shortly. The game itself, the star performers of that match were players who desperately needed a good performance. The manager needed the players to react, and those things intertwined. Djed Spence is going to be a key topic today, as is James Maddison. Then we're going to be diving into some of your brilliant questions. How is this going to impact players like Berryvale's future, and much more? We may even touch on the transfer window. And to discuss it all with us today, back after a little seasonal winter sun, shall we say. Djed, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back. It's been too long. I had to wait for a victory to come back, though, so it took a couple extra weeks.
Yeah, as we say, you are the James. When you're not here, you're the Richarlison of the pod, and when you do arrive, you're the James Maddison. You turn up when it's a fair weather game with no pressure. Bit harsh, but I'm going to go 2 studs in, Basuma style. And we've got Oso Johnny. How are you, mate?
Class. Yeah, it's nice to go into work and not have to worry about annoying fans of other teams. Taking the, you know what? Yeah, all good. All set for Thursday. So yeah, it's good to have some good news to talk about for a change. It's been a rough old few weeks.
It's nice to be the gloaters for once, isn't it? In the office, and we haven't had many opportunities like that recently.
Sadly not.
And of course, we have the ever-present Sai. How are you, mate?
Through thick and thin, mate. I'm not that fair weather supporter who turns up just at the big win.
I think we've done recordings of you 3 times in the space of 24 hours together, haven't we?
Listen,
We're getting
mate,
see you more than my wife.
I'm everywhere.
You can be our Hoybier. And for the good times and the bad, always putting in a solid 5 out of 10.
That's it, mate. always all right. But ever, reliable.
Reliable, yeah.
I'm the
Unless asked to make a forward pass. Well, enough bashing our own players by associating them to our own fragilities and weaknesses. So the game, guys, it surpassed all expectations, didn't it? We knew Southampton were a bit rubbish, but we've gone into every game this season during this injury patch thinking we're going to have to fight for every point. But we didn't have to fight too hard for those points. Djed, you've been away the longest. I'll let you start on your analysis of that game. But you can't talk too much about... Oh, you can. Stu isn't here. You can talk about Djed Spence. Go on. Off you go,
Yeah, I
mate.
was going to say, I'm going to have to take... Stu's unfortunately not here, so I'm going to be the one who talks about him the most. I thought he looked fantastic. I went back and rewatched the game last night to kind of see what went so well, and I do think that part of it is that I think that he's one of the few players at this point, of the players who are playing right now, that aren't, like, I guess including our center backs, I'd say he's one of the few players that I'm comfortable with, like, dribbling out of our defense, which I think is something that we've severely lacked. Like, even like a player like our wingers, with the exception of Kulusevski, I wouldn't say have the best tight dribbling. They have other strengths that are in other areas. And then players like Porro are fantastic as well, but aren't like known for like beating a man one-on-one. But Spence just has this ability to like ghost by defenders that I think was really, really helpful. I thought he was fantastic in coverage. There was the one that I think is making the rounds on X, the Everything app, where he comes back and covers for Porro when after Udogie went off injured, where he's on the left and he comes back and covers all the way onto the right side of the defense because Porro gets caught out of position. And like having someone who can just eat space like that and is like willing to make those runs is really good, especially from someone like him, where it's like there's questions about why he's not playing. Is it attitude issues? I think that with today's game, and I'm hoping he'll continue to show in the future, that it may have just been like there's no place for you, especially with being left out of the Europa League squad, where I think he probably would have started more games if he could have been in there. So I think this is really exciting for him, especially because our injury crisis with I don't know how long Udogie's going to be out, if he's out at all, but if Udogie's out, then he's going to have to play. And I'm hoping that he continues this good run of form and continues to make good on, I think this was his first ever start for us in a competitive match, if I remember correctly, which is kind of crazy. So hopefully he takes that and runs with it. I think that he could be an exciting squad piece at least, and I don't know, if he plays well enough, he could even play his way into the starting 11 at some point, even when everyone's back.
Johnny, you had a pen in your mouth a second ago as you were nodding in agreement with Djed, but he slipped the ball through to another player who had a fantastic game, James Maddison. Was he your man of the match, or were you more on the Djed Spence side of that game?
I think somebody bags a couple of goals and contributes with the performance he put in, particularly first half, obviously, when the whole team was ticking on nicely. I think Maddison has to be the man of the match. It is so frustrating when we've had so many sort of Jekyll and Hyde conversations about Maddison. There's no question that when he's on form as he was against City, that he makes a really big difference in terms of creativity. And obviously we got the perfect start yesterday. Amazing work from Spence, really, but a great run from Maddison. I suppose the thing about Maddison as well yesterday was he was drifting around into several different. He was playing 6 at some points, 8s, 10s, and both of the goals were that second goal, the way he was able to manage to get the strength and to hook that into the top corner was incredible. So I mean, yeah, the Maddison was just buzzing. He was everywhere. He was really quality. It is just frustrating, and you're just desperate for him to back it up, aren't you? Like put that string of performances together like you did at the start of last year, which we keep talking about the start of last year, because we're crying out for that, especially at the moment when we're so thin on the ground with numbers. But there were so many good performances. I mean, there were Sonny is somebody who deserves a mention as well. He got his goal. He was at times a little bit hesitant, as he has been, but I thought that overall his performance, particularly in the first part of the first half, was really strong. He was looking really much more sort of supercharged, like he was like his old determined, very direct self, and really backing himself and fancying his ability to make chances. And I think he can get two assists and as well as the goal. So he took this goal really nicely. So I mean, for me, there are lots of players who put in top notch performances. The young boys as well. I don't want to go through the entire team. Got to leave aside for something to talk about. But for me, the man of the match would be Maddison. But there weren't really any negatives at all. I mean, I think in terms of performances, the obvious negative is with a doggy going off and then Porro having to come on and not get his rest and that kind of thing. But yeah, I will pause there and let Si speak. But I think Maddison, yes, man of the match. I liked the last thing I'll say. I liked his.
Just
I'll have
I'm
a
gonna
pause
let
there,
Si
but I'll just
speak.
carry on for a little
But
while.
I'm just going to quickly finish the rest of the match debrief first, and then Si, you can pick up the scraps. But go on, Johnny, finish it off.
No, I was just going to say that Maddison likes his social media, and he posted a photo of him with Graham Bergvall afterwards, and he sort of said father and 2 sons or something like that in his, which was quite nice. I mean, it's a bit naff, I guess, but it is quite nice to see that sort of togetherness. And I'm the kind of fan who's a little bit of a sucker for that kind of what appears to be a proper team spirit, in spite of all of the noise and the negativity that we hear. I think there is a proper identity and there is a togetherness, and I do think that actually does count for something personally. So, it's nice to see him given the leadership that we've kind of been knocking him for in recent times, and let's back him because he's still Spurs, and we want him to do that week on week. Right, I'm definitely stopping now.
So, Si, I want you
sure?
to tell us a bit about your thoughts of the game, but also there's another bit on Maddison specifically, just to round off the Maddison chat there. He's often accused by, well, me, of being the most wonderful player in certain games where he's kind of, I feel like Maddison goes with the flow of a game. If things are good, Maddison's good. Maddison's not just good, he's great. When things are bad, Maddison seems to slip into that amnosity and like the feeling of negativity around the ground, and then his performance levels drop a bit. Was that an example of that, or do you think no, that's unfair criticism and he's shown more this season. So that's kind of the Maddison question. But then also from you, in the game, anything else you picked out from that you want to highlight? Because it was a brilliant performance.
Yeah, all round, really, really good. The Maddison thing, I think there is an element of that. I think you do see that when the game's going against us, he gets a bit whingy, he goes down a bit easier, he's looking for fouls a little bit more. When the game's going his way, he seems to be a stronger, more. His attitude seems to be a lot more positive, and he's looking for the opportunities rather than the other stuff. So yeah, maybe I can't argue with that too much. And in terms of the other two, Spence and and Johnny's view on Maddison, there you could argue either way for the man of the match. There, I think Spence for me maybe just nips it. I mean, what was it? The Athletic article today, that was his first start in 881 days. So you've got to admire the guy for having the wherewithal to stick about it and then come on and play like he did yesterday, because he was immense. But there is one person I'd like to just give a shout out to over the last few games, and that's Big Fraser. I thought he had a tremendous game last night. I thought the ball was getting played back to him regularly. He was controlling the ball. There was even a time where he was sort of like standing on the ball, waiting for the Southampton attackers to make the move and then just flicking it out. I think he's been a really, really admirable stand-in for Vic. He's not Vic, and he will never be Vic. But I tell you what, he's not the big drop-off that we and pretty much everybody else in the ground and every other pundit said he was going to be. And that was going to be our Achilles heel, because he absolutely has not been. And I thought he had another really good game last night.
Well said. I think Forster definitely deserves a shout out. When he came in, I think we were all a bit pessimistic and negative about that. We should have signed a backup keeper, etc., etc. But he's really put those feelings at ease now. That you're not, as long as he stays fit, you're not too nervous about being reliant on him for. Of course, he said he's not Big Vic. We'd take Vic back, but Big Fraser is as good as understudy on form that you're going to get. We just need to make sure we stick with him. If the odd clanger might happen here and there, but that's just normal for any keeper, even your first choice. He's been absolutely brilliant.
Great.
He has been. And
I want to actually touch on the Maddison point. I think to defend Maddison a little bit, because I'm in the business of kind of defending all our players. I kind of Jim throws criticism at people, and I back him, and then when those players invariably come back into form, I get to throw it back at Jim. But I think that Maddison, today, to his credit, I think he was like I would say one of the players that set the tone of this game. He's the one who scored the goal in the first minute from a lovely pass from Spence that set the tone of the game, and then he continued to be, I think, the metronome that kind of continued to create the chances that we did, and we created and created and created until we had that 3-0 lead within 15 minutes. So I think that, to his credit, he may have played better because the tone was set so positively, but I do think that he also was part of the reason the tone was set in the way that it was. So I think he deserves credit for that. Goodbye, Sai.
He'll be back. But there's a trend here, isn't there, Djed, right? First, my bugbear was with Kulusevski, and he became our best player. Then I was defending the decision not to play Djed Spence, and here he comes. And then I was saying Maddison doesn't perform when you need him, and he certainly performed above and beyond when we needed him yesterday. I think it's overlooked how important those early goals are, because once you've got 2 goals, their game plan is destroyed. They have to keep going all-out attack against us, and it made the game easy. And that finish from Maddison, you could put, on a very small piece of paper, the number of players in the Premier League who, in a live game environment, could score from that angle. I'd be very intrigued to see what the XG is. I don't know if you guys have it of that opportunity he had when he put it away, but it really was an arrow. It was absolutely beautiful. So well done, Madders. Well done, Djed. I'm sure you really care what I think of you, but you are back on the good list, along with all the other players that maybe I took out the wider frustrations of just not winning very many games on. So yes, Ange, though, guys, around this game as well. This was huge for him, wasn't it? We're all staunchly Ange in. We've been quite open that we think you've got to give him a minimum of this season, absolute minimum, and the summer of next before passing any judgment as to whether he's going to truly work. And that, our one gripe had been some people calling for his head inside the ground when we feel that was detrimental to our own team's success. And the one thing you do as a supporter for 90 minutes is cheer on your team. Keep your protests for either side of the whistle or at half time, but not during the game. Sorry, Si. Go on.
Yeah, no, we think it was a bigger game for Ange than Ange thought it was for himself. Yeah. I think because I think he's got the courage of his conviction so strongly that, listen, I'm not saying that he doesn't like this 5-0 win. Of course he does, and will he use it? Of course he will. But I still think that, last night did we have nine first team squad players out out of 25? 9 players missing. There isn't a team in the country that goes with 9 players missing. And this is a team that almost beat Liverpool at their place, by the way. That was a 3-2. They were 2-1 up at one point, weren't they, I think? Southampton at one point. And I'm not saying that Southampton are a good side. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that there's not a lot of mugs in this division. They played really badly yesterday, but we were superb. And there's a danger that we overreact to this like we do to a draw with Fulham when Fulham go to Anfield and get a draw. So, I think we just need to keep ourselves level-headed. And I think that's where Ange is. So, will he use this? Of course he will. Will he like it? Of course he will. Will he overreact to it? No, he won't.
Yeah, and it was refreshing to see David Ornstein, who is a pretty reliable journalist who gets these things spot on. He's known to be probably the most reliable reporter for Tottenham News. When he says it, it's been validated 3 or 4 times that the board weren't ever remotely considering removing Postecoglou, which was, I think, reassuring for the majority of the fan base who are saying, even if it doesn't work out, I want to make sure that we've given this guy everything and we haven't just flip-flopped. People calling for Thomas Frank to take over and those kind of things. It's like, well, what's the point? We'll just be back in this spot in 1 year's time, not giving him enough time. And Ange has a higher ceiling than Thomas Frank, we feel. His system fully working, has the opportunity, and it's good enough to win a trophy along the way. Whereas those other managers we're linked with, they'd steady the ship. We'd probably get 6th or 5th guaranteed this season. But next year we'd be 6th or 5th again, then 6th or 5th again, and then we'd sack him. Whereas if Ange, you feel, ride the storm, swallow this season for what it is, and you can push for something special next year. And then we'll all be praying for him to stay when he says, no, thank you, Tottenham. I've done it with you. I'm going to go do it somewhere else where everyone says it's impossible to do it.
Jim, I think the thing about the game yesterday I agree with Si in terms of how Ange feels in his own conviction of what he's doing. But when you're looking at the fact that from Thursday, we've got 4 games in 11 days. And obviously Thursday's a huge game, which I know we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. But we've got Man United in this massive quarterfinal. Then we've got Liverpool at home. And, that's going to be a very feisty affair, especially after what happened last year. Then we've got Boxing Day, we've got Forest away, and they've done Villa a couple of days ago. And then we've got Wolves at home on the 29th, which is up against a team with a new manager, which, can sometimes have a sort of honeymoon bouncing effect. And you're sort of looking, as you've said, and we've said, over and over every week, looking at this league and the way that the game's going. I mean, you sort of start to look at the fixtures after the run that we'd had prior to yesterday and think, you're wondering where the next points are coming from. You're wondering how can we sort of arrest the noise and the focus that is so negative on the manager. And I guess as much as we can be rational and Ange can be, have confidence in what he's doing, and the noises from Ornstein and the others, and they know about the board's view with regard to Postecoglou. Like, things can change quite quickly, and if you lose against Southampton, and then you're out of the cup against United, and then you're up against Liverpool, and we're going to be second favourites for that. Let's be honest. And suddenly, then the next game you're going to Forest. When people think, oh, Forest, like who are they? But they're like they're fourth in the league now, aren't they? And they've just, I mean, so you sort of starting to look at Jesus, like now we're like Ange is a complete fraud. He's completely been found out. We're how long is it? He's even worse than Pep Guardiola, for goodness sake, And it's like, so I think yesterday, as much as Southampton didn't make it difficult, but that was because, as Djed said, that was because of the strong start that we made, and we know that Tottenham have got those kinds of games in them, and the fact that we're the second top scorers in the league, sitting in 10th, could have potentially, if we'd bagged a couple more goals, could have been top scorers in the league. So I mean, it's not a surprise to anybody really that Tottenham can turn up and do that. But I think for Ange, it was actually possibly, from the outside perspective, was really, really important. And I don't know if it's enough, but at least it's sort of given us a little bit of respite, and we're not sort of even further down the table than we would have been if we hadn't got those 3 points, which again, still so ridiculously tight.
Well, we're really not far off those European spots at all.
No.
Like as we said, the stats show 10 teams have failed to win back-to-back games this season. We are one of the ones that have won back to get hit back, and still the underlying improvements are there despite the injury crisis. Right? How often did we score 4 or more goals last season? Once. We've done it 4 times already, a third of the way through the season. That is a sign of improvement. Our defensive set-piece record is in the top 7 of the Premier League. That's not bad. It's nowhere near the level of scrutiny it gets in terms of being seen as this massive Achilles heels of ours. It's really not.
We've
And
conceded the
numbers are
third
good.
fewest goals per game in the Premier League.
Yeah, third best defence and second best attack, or first best attack.
Second best, 36 goals against Chelsea's 37. The challenge we got there, and just to put the stats into context, is, and it might be a little bit of the flip side of things, is when we've won by a lot. So that really boosts your goals for, right? But when we've lost, we've only lost by the odd goal here and there.
We're one of 2 teams that hasn't lost by more than 1 goal this season.
Exactly. So
we haven't lost by more than 1 goal this season.
No, we haven't. So
Thanks, Son, against Chelsea for saving that, by the way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when you look at that, you sort of like say, how can that be? But we're only 10th. Well, that can only be because when we win so convincingly. We put a couple of 4s away. There's some 3s in there. We score a lot of goals, but except for Chelsea, we tend to score them when we run away with the game.
That's true. So, and there's another player actually you need to apologise to at the moment. Sonny had a good game. I think just a little nod towards Sonny there.
Good first finish, wasn't it? Good.
It was.
His first goal. Was that the second goal? It was the second goal, wasn't it?
Goal.
Great finish.
And the pass to Maddison for the 5th was quite good as well.
Oh my God, it's beautiful.
We know he's not a natural, like his playing style isn't a natural fit for Ange Ball, which I think for some people, my frustration always gets with him, but he always gives 110%. And that's all you can really ask for players. He's being forced to play out position in a system that doesn't really suit him often playing up front. And then that's when I don't like him getting stick, is when he's played as a striker and he gets stick for his performances. I'm kind of like, well, that's just not what he's doing that as a favour to us. He's going out of his way to go in a position he hates playing in to try and help the team. He's not complaining about that. He's giving everything to it. Don't criticise him when he's not great in it. He doesn't want to be playing centre forward either. He wants to be playing his traditional left wing position, cutting in and having a shot. So let's support him. But did you guys have any more stats on the games? I know you guys did a bit of research before we jump into questions from the pod listeners and members.
I think just all the stats you look at are just, there's a bit of a contrast between the first and the second half, but they're just all so positive. It's difficult to pull out any single stat that stands out, if I'm honest.
I mean, if we want to talk about stats, I don't think you can go much without talking about one of my other pet players, Dejan Kulusevski. I mean, just looking at his numbers compared to everyone else in the Premier League, not only for this game, but for the entire season, he's near the top of chances created. Also, shout out to Son in talking about big stats. I think this is that the assists from yesterday make him our all-time assist leader in the Premier League.
Really? If I had a confetti button, I'd push it right now.
So that's good for him. Obviously, just another feather in the cap. And if we don't get a trophy with him, I will be devastated. Because if anyone deserves it, it's him.
Absolutely. That's why we have to keep him one more year. It's just, even if we signed, I don't know, the most world-class left winger in the world, or Yang ends up being Son, but infinitely better, or what a dream that would be. We got to keep Sonny around and let him lift a cup for us, don't we?
Absolutely.
And I think he'll definitely be in the squad next year in some form anyway. So we'll rock on to the questions, shall we? We'll start with. I'm actually going to start with X today, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, your choice. But
Everything
there's rip the everything app, super app. Richard Paul. Yes, we're on Blue Sky as well. If you want to do that, we're on both sides. We're not picking sides. Richard Paul says, also the famous Top Div, you remember, is his handle. After which goal yesterday did you finally relax and feel comfortable? It was only the fourth for me, which is ridiculous considering everything. Big thank you to you all for being balanced and sensible. You and Ali Gold are the best. By the way, on that note, Lee Wilmot, Ali Gold's boss, is going to come on the pod.
We're replacing.
So,
sorry, Ali.
yeah, a bit of members content coming on. We thought, you know what? We won't just stop at Ali Gold. We'll go one up the chain because that's what we do. We always think one more. But yeah, did you guys have that inferiority complex even when we were 2, 3, 4? I thought the game had finished at 4-0 up.
I was waiting for the sixth, honestly.
Clearly, you still thought it was finished.
I'm still not quite sure we got a result out of it. I need to go back and check.
Yeah. I think it was. If you listen back to the watch along yesterday, I think even after 4, we were all saying this could be 5-4 the other way.
Yeah, it's you can never. It's weird, even though all the underlying stats say we're good defensively, we do hold on to the vast majority of our leads. We are going to be fine. You're just so scarred from. I think I'm a bit scarred from the Mourinho era in particular, where we were just constantly giving away those late wins.
Yeah, the stats say one thing, but the eye test was still a bit wobbly every now and then, aren't we? We still look wobbly to that far.
Our last Southampton away was the Conte meltdown.
It was, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Maybe it was that.
So, bit of there's plenty of history there, but I think if I watched the game back, like I said, and just after, I think within, even honestly at 2-0, it was like, because we were just creating chance after chance. Even the ones that didn't end up as goals were just, it was like a bounce away from being a goal before that, and like you just knew another one was coming. I probably wouldn't have guessed it would have been 5 at that point, but I would have expected at least a 3-0 going into half. And like we've said with the stats before, is like when we score, when it rains it pours with Tottenham. Especially when it comes to goals, and we haven't lost by more than 1, with the exception of Chelsea and the Brighton game. If we start a game well and we actually put chances away and that like quick start, we tend to run away with those kind of games. So despite our scars from Mourinho, Conte, whatever, I think that this team is better equipped to kind of kill a game like we killed it today. So I'm starting the scars, the wounds are starting to heal, but the scars will remain ever present, obviously.
I remember in the watch along, whenever we got the third goal, we actually acknowledged the fact that there's been this talk around after the Brighton defeat and then the defeat to Chelsea, throwing away 2-goal leads. Like we said, oh well, we haven't thrown away a 3-goal lead yet. So when the fourth one went in, there's a logic to top divs, and I kind of like go along with that. It's sort of been my tradition, or my kind of my default position as a Spurs fan over the years. When things are going well, you think back to that United performance at Old Trafford when we were 3-0 up at halftime, weren't we? Lost 5-3. Is that right? And just like we need a 4-goal lead. It's like in rugby, you need like a 25-point lead to be pretty confident that you've done enough. So I'm with him on the 4 goals. I thought, especially like we go 3-0 up on 14 minutes, so there's still 76 minutes for the other lot to get all their goals back. So yeah, I think when you get 4, you shouldn't be losing at least. You might
hold
still
on for the draw. Hold on,
exactly. Well, do you remember the game against West Ham a few years ago at home?
I was going to bring that one up.
And
yeah,
we were like 3-0 up, and I was so cocky on the messaging to my West Ham mate, and it was like 20 minutes we were 3-0 up, and then Lanzini, that ridiculous goal from 50 million yards out. It's like,
As soon as it hit, as
Ah,
soon as it hits the top corner, it just says Johnny has left the chat.
yeah, totally. There's too many scars.
Kai Kalani on Twitter X says, "Hi guys, what did you make of Ange's post-match comments about Spence having to bide his time before getting his chance to play?" And that brings up the Djed Spence topic. Go on, Deej.
I mean, it's like, yeah, he did, because I'm very positive Ange, but like Stu, I'm kind of I don't love the way that Spence has been handled, because I do think Spence has been talented, and I think he's shown it like pretty much every time he's played this season. I think he definitely had some. He obviously had issues with like, you know, his behavior and whatnot. Like we saw with the way that his Leeds loan got terminated and got shipped off to Genoa. But I think this season he's been fantastic, and I think that the biding his time is kind of a testament to that. And I would say that that's honestly potentially even like a sly compliment from Ange, that he's not throwing a fit to that he isn't getting the playing time he needs. I mean, we saw him; he was the one that was going over to console Ange after one of our tough fixtures, and it's like I think that he's just matured so much, and I think that by Ange acknowledging the patience that he's showing, I would say that, like, yeah, you can be frustrated with the way that the situation has transpired. If I was Djed Spence, I probably would be too. But I think that by him, like Ange said, biding his time, waiting it out, and then putting in the performance that he did yesterday, I think that speaks wonders to his maturity, and I'm hoping that continues into the future, and I'm hoping that he takes the chance now that he's been given it, and I'm hoping that Ange continues to provide these opportunities as long as he continues to grab those opportunities by the throat, if you will.
Jelly Bean says, Johnny, what'll we do with Werner?
Send the bugger back. Send the bugger back.
What would you do with Werner? Oh my god.
We need him though, on a serious note. But what do we do if everyone comes back and Yang ends up being ready to play? I know that's a lot of ifs.
Yeah.
Would you keep him? Is there much point in sending him back? There's no financial gain in sending
him. No, I don't think there's any point in sending him back in January. Like, what is the contract situation? Are we not? Do we have the opportunity to do that?
Yes, but the other club, RB Leipzig, have to agree to it.
Yeah.
So effectively, we can go, please, can you have him back? And they can say no.
Well, we have actually needed him. You know,
that's what
like,
say.
What's drawn the most attention, I suppose, is his waste in front of goal. So those are the things that get all of the, they're in the highlights reel. I know he's been brutal in not being able to control football as an incredibly basic manner on countless occasions, but he's also ghosted, to coin DJ's earlier verb, past many a defender and left them for dead, and put in some decent crosses and made some assists. So it's not like he's been completely and utterly, not without his merits. So it's really, really sad. I'm sure he's a really nice guy. We're not in it for the sentiment. I thought the way Ange spoke about him after Rangers was really interesting. And it sort of ties in a bit with what Dee just saying regarding Spence. I think it was really obvious after the draw at Ibrox, as well as just the general frustration at another pretty poor performance from Tottenham on Thursday. And just had zero kind of patience himself, I think, in that presser. And when he was asked about Werner, it wasn't pulling any punches, and he was just calling it as it is. And especially when he was asked, like, what do you, how did Timo take it when you called him out, when he told him, well, like, it's just not good enough. You've got 18-year-olds stepping up, and you're a German international, you're a Champions League winner, and you're basically just not giving us the contribution we need. And he was saying, I don't really care. I don't really care what Timo thinks. It's not like that's not his. I mean, obviously, you want players to be motivated to improve, but I thought, like, in a way, it sort of could be tied in maybe with the lack of sentimentality, the issues we've talked about before in terms of Ange's relations with players. Like, he recognised them, he values their positive characteristics, etc. But ultimately, we're all there to do a job. And I hope that Spence is, getting back to what Djed was saying, I hope that, like, I agree, like, Spence deserves a lot of respect for the way he stepped up and hasn't, thrown his toys out of the pram, and came in and brilliant performance yesterday, especially with our situation with Pearl just never getting arrested now, doggies at, question mark. So Werner, it'd be great to not need him. It'd be great if Jan came in and he was some kind of like, incredible, indispensable player. And obviously Mikey Moore comes back in and he can play his part. So yeah, it'd be great if we could do that. But I don't think, given the first half of the season, there's much point, because we have really needed Werner, actually, in my opinion.
He's definitely got value to add in the squad. You'd rather him there than playing a central midfielder on left wing, because that's our only option.
Exactly,
right? He's not that, on his day, he's not that bad. He's actually a very valuable player to use when he's on form.
My opinion of Werner is I don't think we necessarily cut his loan unless there's like a player that we want to bring in that him being there would block. Then obviously, if we can upgrade on him, like that's the case with like most players, right? If you can upgrade on them, then you get rid of them, or you relegate them to the bench or whatever. But I do think the one thing I would advocate for, and obviously I'm not Ange, so I can't make this decision, is I would probably, when we're allowed to make the changes to our Europa League squad in the January window, I would probably replace him with Spence. Because especially if Udogie is out for any more than a few weeks, that becomes a pretty big issue for us.
Sure.
Not having a left back, because I mean Davies is out. If Udogie's out, who do you play there if not Djed Spence? So I think it may not even be his fault, but I do think he'd be the one on the chopping block if we were to.
Dude, with Moore, Odegaard, Yang, and Son on the left wing, we don't need a left winger. And Werner, we've got 5. We need a right winger if we're going to sign anyone in January anyway. So keep Werner. Use him to get through your injury crisis, and look at a right winger. Give Brennan Johnson competition and have a different type of player there for different games.
I agree with that. I'm just saying that I'm not advocating to send Werner back, but I do think he's the one that I think we need to bring Spence into the Europa League squad. Is basically what I'm saying, and I think that he's probably the one that I would be looking at right now. I haven't looked up and down the squad list. Obviously, if it was simple and it was just like one of the people bring someone else in, he'd take off like Brandon Austin, but that doesn't matter because he's homegrown club trained, so that spot is basically a free hit.
Yeah.
So of the people who aren't, I think he's probably the one I would look at.
I think just to sort of back up the stats here, I know it was a little bit of a joke at the start, but if you look at his stats for the last 365 days, so it's the last year, right? So goals, shocking. He's in the 9th percentile for goals per 90. So we all know that his goals tally isn't what it should be. But his assists tally is the 94th percentile. He averages 0.39 assists per game. That's really strong. So he does add something to the team. He stretches the game. He forces the right channel to go wide, and I do think he brings something to it. His finishing is never going to be top dollar, but then we sort of knew that when we bought him, right? When we got him on loan, we knew that his finishing wasn't there because it wasn't there with Chelsea. But he does add in terms of the assists. He's the 94th percentile in the Premier League.
Yep. And Si, I'll leave the next question for you to start with then, as you've had the least to say in the last 5, because we've been rambling on and interjecting. But thanks for providing much-needed balance to the fan base, lads. That's it. Right. No. How important is qualification to the Carabao Cup semis in regards to the fans backing Ange? Do you think a loss suddenly changes the outlook? Personally, I am Ange in, and that's from Potter, 532,000. Got beaten to that username. Yeah, got beaten to that username, I think.
Do you think he went from Potter 1, Potter 2, up to Potter 5? It took him 3 weeks to find the username. Anyway,
exactly.
So to answer the question, does Thursday change people's view and opinion of Ange? No, I don't think so. yesterday might have done. If we'd have got beat yesterday, I think some people might have slipped to the dark side. Us, definitely not, but some people would have slipped to the dark side. But Thursday, I think, it's not a free hit because it's a big game and it is really important. It's a quarter-final. It's at home. It's against the Man United side who scraped a win yesterday. Let's be honest. That game was awful yesterday. I watched it back today. Oh, my God. What a terrible game until the last 2 minutes. Two almost mid-table sides there, it looked like, playing yesterday. So Man United, I think, are there for the getting as well. I don't think that they're not strong. They're at our place. I wish I could be there. I just cannot get away from work to get over there because I think the place will be rocking. If the City game was anything to go by, I think the place will be absolutely rocking. I think if we win, it just adds something else to us. But I don't think it affects the crowd's view of Ange. No, I don't.
That win was Dr. City, wasn't it, for Man United? You can kind of see where other teams come from when you need a win, and it doesn't really quite scratch the itch if you beat someone of a similar footing. But if you go beat a bigger club, it really helps.
So what's that? 1 win in 11 now for City. 1 win in 11 and 8 losses.
My God.
And everyone beating them, it gives you that lift. You know they're in bad form, but it's still Manchester City. They've still got Kevin De Bruyne on the pitch.
It's still
got Haaland. It's still Pep Guardiola. So it's Dr. City, not Dr. Tottenham at the moment. But it will have given Man United a boost. I think we've got to remember I hope we can win, and I think we've got a great chance on Thursday. You've got to remember, though, not to climb all on Ange's back. It is still an injury-ridden team. And we don't typically do well in cups. We're juggling all the competitions. If we get through to the semi, it's a huge achievement from Ange, all considered at the moment. I know people will be shouting at whatever they're listening to this on, saying, that's ridiculous, we're Tottenham Hotspur. But Ange is still in all competitions, and most of the managers were not in this situation at this stage of the season. It is, considering the injuries and the transition we're in, it is a good achievement if we make the semi-final. Once you're there, who knows? You're in the mixer. You really
Jim,
are.
when you look at the lineup, so we're the last of the 4 quarterfinals. Okay, Arsenal are home to Crystal Palace, so you would think that's a fairly straightforward prediction there, but we know it isn't because Palace could win the other day. Arsenal obviously didn't beat Everton at home, so who knows? Newcastle at home to Brentford. Again, okay, Brentford are absolutely diabolical away, so you'd think the two are going to get through there. And then you got Southampton against Liverpool. Now, again, like how many players is Slot going to rest for that? Because they've got Tottenham coming up at the weekend, and they're now Chelsea are in hot pursuit of Liverpool. It would be interesting to see what Slot does there with the lineup, because obviously Southampton are going to be reeling there, but they're going to be maybe up for something to prove. And again, like we just don't know what's going to happen from game to game. And in years gone by, thinking, okay, we get past United, and then semis, you do that thing where you haven't even won your quarterfinal, and you're thinking about the semi-final, and you've got Arsenal, Newcastle, and Liverpool, and you start thinking, oh well, I wouldn't mind anyone except for Liverpool or something like that. It's like, well, do you know what? Like anything can happen, and it's just like the narrative. In my class today, I did a quiz, an Arsenal quiz, because I had to get rid of an Arsenal toy. I've got this Arsenal teddy bear, which I started using as a pin cushion, but some of the kids in my class got offended, and because it was basically a voodoo doll and not a pin cushion, and I was enjoying sticking the pins in too much, so they were quite getting a bit disturbed by my my pinning off the Arsenal. Anyway, I did this quiz, and the last question, which was the tiebreaker between the Arsenal fans, was how long is it since Arsenal last scored a goal that wasn't from a corner? And we put up on Google on the board, so I typed in how long is it since, and you know the way Google predicts like what you're going to ask, and of course, how long is it since? What came up? The longest, the first or the second predicted question was Spurs won a trophy. So the entire class were absolutely ribbing me senseless when I'm trying to have a pop at Arsenal, and this is what we've got to get off our back.
Yeah,
we've got to get like it's 2008. So I do agree with Si, but we are desperate. We are absolutely desperate for a trophy. So
do I think it does something for the team? Yeah, But I think the question was, does it mean the fans will go off Ange if we don't go? I don't think it will change the view of the boss, but it is a massive, massive game for the club.
Yeah. I think the 80% who are with Ange will stick with him, but the noisy
Yeah.
now 20%,
They're
which
gonna
was a
get noisier.
2%, will get really noisy
Because
again.
Yeah, I agree.
if you look at clubs that then push on, they have fairly early successes. I mean, I know the Goons haven't gone on and won anything, but I'd said to won the FA Cup with them.
That's right.
Pep won the League Cup in fairly early in his tenure as well. And I think, didn't Klopp have a League Cup in there early on as well?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
and I think that then it's about the belief, isn't it? Ange talks a lot about the belief. If you win, it instills the belief, and if you continue to do the things along with a lot that are aligned to your philosophy and the way that you want to play, then it just adds to that belief. And winning something, it's winning something, right? It almost doesn't matter what it is right now. It's winning something.
Oh, totally.
Agree.
Yeah,
So
I think that's true. Not to speak too much longer on it, because we've kind of gone over it ad nauseum. But I think to just kind of wrap up my thoughts on it is that I don't think that this is a massive game. I mean, it's a massive game, like you said, it's a massive game for the club. I don't think it's a massive game for Ange. I don't think it's a massive game for deciding whether or not you're an Ange supporter or not.
No.
I think that at this point, you've probably made up your mind more or less what you think of Postecoglou and whether or not you think a project with him is worth pursuing, because like at this point, with the injuries that we have and the players that we have, it is still just that. It is a project. We do not we are in the midst of a very, very bad injury crisis. We are, and like obviously some of the results that we've had and some of the performances we've had have been subpar, and I'm not going to pretend that it's not. But if we lose to Manchester United and you decide to be Ange out because of that, I think you were probably already going there anyway, and you were just waiting for the next loss. Like we could lose to Liverpool, we could lose to the best team in the world, whoever that is right now. It might be Liverpool, I don't know, but you could lose to the best team in the world, and I think that you would still be like, we need to cut this off at this point, because
and it's more deep rooted, isn't it, Djed? We said before we were actually going to go into. We don't have time today. We'll do a separate one, but it just links back to your wider view of how the club is run. And at this stage, I think being able to call Ange a bad appointment will suit your perception that the board need to also change because they keep making the wrong decisions. And there's some of the Ange out people are in that camp, and they're just waiting for that chance to jump at that and use that, which is fine because they're desperate for change. You know, we're just in a different mindset to them. We're more kind of in the middle of that stuff, but let's not go down that rabbit hole. But you can see why, like you're saying, I think it's such a good point that if you're already out, you're kind of waiting for that next excuse to vocalize that naturally, even if it's a subconscious thing. We need to jump to the next. Isn't it? It is, yeah. And we're not saying that's right or wrong, right? Let's hope that we on this pod are right and Ange works, because that's good for everyone. But if we're wrong, then fair enough. But I want to stick with this project, and I don't want to make a decision on Ange based on the cup game. I think we need to see this through, regardless of this difficult spell and how we do. This bit more of a rant question from Jashraf255. So he only had to go through 255 usernames to get to his. He said, I said, was the Southampton... I'm just going to rephrase this as a question because it's more of a rant. He basically said, was the Southampton game just papering over the cracks before the Rangers game? He said, I don't call out my players, and then post-Rangers he called out Werner. What I'm trying to point out here is Ange's hypocrisy. Why do you think he can't remain consistent? Another example, why tell us he's going for the title, yet he signed off on Gray, Odegaard, Berryville and Yang? You can't be misleading us. I think that's kind of just what we've just discussed, though, in a way. I think maybe you're maybe you're not. Let us know in the next comments. I'd like to discuss this with you. Maybe you're kind of, your strong view, and maybe you're right, maybe we're wrong, is that he's not the right guy. And I think I just really don't think it is papering over crack. We're just in the midst of a massive injury crisis, siege mentality time. Any points you can get right now are a huge bonus. And the pressure's on everyone. And when the pressure is on no one more than it is the manager. And I think when he, as he said, put a senior player out there with quite literally with teenagers and said, I need you to perform today. and that player's head dropped and he just couldn't stand up under the pressure and let him down. He felt embarrassed because he gave that player a chance. He brought them in against everyone else's, vocal objections to bringing in that player. And a moment of, I think Ange is probably the most consistent manager with his messaging out of any in the league, but he did waver from that briefly as a human being did. I don't really see that as him constantly doing it, and that's the 100th example. I see that's the second or third example in 18 months. But guys, any different views on that?
I think it's fair comment to call out when he said, because he did say before that as well, when he got asked a question about Romero, he said, if we do this in private. And he did, and he said he didn't call out Timo specifically, but he did. And
he did.
It's okay to call him out and say, I'm not sure that was the right thing to do, Ange. I think you do that thing in the dressing room, and you look, Fergie would never have done that in his time. Arteta doesn't do it. Klopp didn't do it. And I think it was a mistake. I mean, but it's okay to say that your manager's made a mistake. Just because I'm Ange in doesn't mean I'm an Ange loving all the time. And it's okay to call it when you think, we've called out some issues around subs and game management. It's fair enough. And I think that was a fair comment to call that out. In terms of papering over the cracks, I think it's the opposite. I think he's pulling the paper off and seeing the cracks at the moment. I think that's where we're at
that's a very good point.
In our project. I think we're still at some level of diagnosis and prep work before we put the wallpaper back up. Honestly, there's still a lot of work to do before you can put the finish in.
Still rising damp coming through the floors. I haven't found all the sources to it yet.
I'd like to talk a little bit about another part of this question, if you wouldn't mind. But about the part with the going for the title and then signing off on these young players. I don't think that we could have. Honestly, I think that Archie Gray is probably one of the best players we could have signed for our injury crisis, because he has played in 3 different positions already. And how many players are there in world football right now that can do that? Archie Gray has played at center back at a reasonable level. He's played at right back at a reasonable level, and he's played at midfield at a reasonable level. I don't think I've seen a single game from Archie Gray where I've looked at him and said he looks like he doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that is a massive testament to him. And I think it's like, just because he's young doesn't mean he's not worth the transfer fee that we paid for him, which part of that also got offset by giving them Joe Rodon, if I remember correctly.
Put it this way, Djed, if someone offered us 40 million for Archie Gray, I don't think many fans would remotely consider that conversation.
No. But then also the other young players that we signed Berval for 8.5 million. That's in the modern age, that's a drop in the bucket. We signed Yang for 4 million euros. Apparently, I think I've heard between 4 and 6. That's nothing. That's Levy finds that under his couch cushion every day.
Well, the club
and then Odegaard, the last player, he looked good when he played. He's just been injured, and you can't. There's no way for Ange to say, yes, we're going to sign this guy, and then he's going to be injured 2 games into the season, and he's going to be useless. And that means we're not going to go for the title.
Burnley. He played in the Premier League. He looked good for Burnley when he played.
Yeah, and so I think it's a bit unfair to look at those signings and say that means we're not going for the title. I think that it's actually good that we're building for the future. Obviously, could we have had more experience? Could we have brought in more senior players? Probably, yeah, I would agree. But I don't think that the players. I don't think that the young players are, especially those ones mentioned, are the problem necessarily.
And also, we got 9 out injured, which is highlighting the issue, right? You don't plan for a season to say, "Well, I'm going to have half my team injured for most of the season. Let's buy some youngsters to plug those big gaps." They would have been bought to play mostly Europa, EFL, and then maybe some Premiership minutes, sort of like half hour here, half hour there, to aid their development. It was never, ever meant for them to be thrown in the way that they are. And I think credit to them, by the way. I mean, I thought Burnwell did brilliantly last night. He had a couple of shaky moments, but I think on the whole, I didn't realise how strong he was, how big he was as well. He's 6'2".
Well, that leads to one of the...
strong as an ox as well.
Well, so that leads to one of the questions from Elias, by the way, which was, do you guys believe Berryvale's future is in the number 6 role?
Certainly possible. I don't know. I think he's going to be kind of like... I think I don't know. He's so young, and I think that he has so much talent that I think that he really could play any of the midfield positions at this point. I think that I think if in a perfect world, I think he's probably more of an 8. but that's just because I think that his ball progression and his dribbling is fantastic as well, and I think he has an eye for a goal as well, as you can see from his time at Djurgården. I'm sure I butchered that name. I'm sorry, but he I definitely would not be mad if he did play the 6. I think he played it fine. I think against other teams that are stronger in the press, I'd be a little bit more worried, just because, I mean, obviously he's still young, he's still working on, and he's still like new to the Ange system. He's only been here for a few months, really, and that's kind of, you kind of have to learn like where these players are, and also he's playing with a completely like new back line at this point. So I think that I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up as a 6. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up as not a 6. I think that he's the world's at his feet, and I think he's supremely talented.
We've seen what's happened with Zeki this year. This change in his role and the contribution he's made, and how he's like a renaissance in his Tottenham career, having been widely dismissed before by so many fans. That, to have players who are as versatile as Archie Gray, as another case in point, like it's the same with most of our midfielders. They're not just defined by a single slot in the team, and that's obviously the nature of the way that Ange sets up his teams. That it is a very fluid kind of formation, and it's almost like the sort of total football Cruyff kind of idea, in the sense that you've got players who can make a big difference all over the pitch. So yeah, I mean, it's an understandable question, and I think Djed is right. I think it's too early to tell where he's going to be potentially the most effective. But it's a nice problem to have when you've got players who've got the strength and potentially can contribute in one position, but actually they've clearly got the ability to score goals and be incredibly creative as well. So I think that's something good. And just to address the point in the question about the going for the title, I mean, Ange, as with most managers, is not going to turn around and say, "Oh yeah, no, like I think I'm aiming for 65 points, or I'm aiming, whatever." It's like, what's Sai doing with his thumbs up? That's
he's just pressed
I don't know what's going on there again.
God.
But it's like managers are aiming to win every game, obviously, right? But so yes, you're aiming to win the title at the start of the season. But really, are you? I've been really distracted here. But are you really gonna? Realistically, you're talking going to be winning the league at the start of the season? Absolutely not. Is this really challenging time? Yes, it is. But will we benefit from the people who are listening to this audio? Will have no idea what's happened. But it's not my fault. It's Sai.
You should check us out on YouTube if you want to see what's happened to Sai. But just apologies.
My camera's just frozen. I don't know what's going on.
He's got this creepy pose. It's really freaking me out.
I know, it looks a bit weird, doesn't it?
I have a quota of
Really
at least
weird.
2 over 50s on the show, and we get these teething issues. Carry on, Johnny.
No, I'm just like, so yes, okay, title. You're not going to you're going to aim to win every game, but we are going to benefit from the exposure that Gray and Bergvall and these young boys are getting at such an early stage in their career, because that's just for years that hasn't happened. We haven't had managers that have given young players the backing, and they haven't given them the minutes. You think about Scarlett or Parrott, these kind of boys down through the last few years, and just you never really saw them. And one player after another is just sort of failing to live up to the hopes and of all the hype that goes with them. So it could be that because of this, a byproduct of the unfortunate reality we are in, that we are in a stronger position to be challenging for honours because of the experience that these young lads are actually getting, kind of ironically.
We do need to wrap up on this, so we've got one more question there, Johnny, as well. What do you think of the critical mass for injuries? How many players do we need to get back before injuries are considered a valid reason for a poor performance? But I don't know. I just find this
too as well, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, it really depends, because like it's all well and what if not having Van der Ven and Romero is worse than not having more Yang and Odegaard out at once. Do you know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
it really depends. And I get what you're like. Last year, to be fair, there is some validity to say we had a bit of an injury crisis, not as bad as this last year. When the players came back, we were rubbing our hands, being like, "Here we go." But we didn't actually pick up momentum really after that. And people blame that on not enough games. So those players couldn't get a rhythm back after they came back from injuries. But it's so hard to say. That's from STZ024. We do need to wrap there. We're at the hour, but I would like to say, if you do follow the show and you want to help us out, there's something you could do for us. You could send this YouTube link or podcast link in a WhatsApp group of Spurs fans or someone else you know supports Spurs and just pass on the pod. You can just say, you should check this one out. And if you don't want to do that because you're the only Spurs fan in your family and you're unfortunately born into a bunch of gooners, just subscribe. And then you go. You've helped us. We also have members. If you want to be a member, you can join our non-frothy, nice, calm community WhatsApp group with us, along with legends like Hypernoise, Vaz, and far more. Sorry, guys. I feel like I've got to read all of you out now, but I can't because we won't finish on time. But the legends in there, Shafay and more. God, I can't stop. Jelly bean. Oh, my God. Up the Spurs, boys. Up the Spurs.
Spurs.
Roll on Thursday.
Roll on Man United.
Yeah.